and welcome back to another VegInspired video. I am your host, Kathy. I am the CEO and founder of VegInspired. I am a full-time recipe developer and three-time cookbook author, and I do, fun fact, travel the country in an RV with my husband and our two cats. So I always like to start off telling you all that because if you hear a noise or see a flash of fur behind me, it could be a cat doing something. So you never know what to expect. But I am really excited about this conversation that we're going to have today. I am honored and thrilled to welcome Colleen Patrick-Goudreau to our show today. I have followed Colleen for years. We have so much in common, from our philosophies to our general zest for life and for travel, and then even our love of furry little kitty babies. So let me introduce Colleen, and then we'll welcome you in. But for nearly 30 years, Colleen's compassionate living philosophy has been propelling plant-based eating in mainstream and forever changing how we regard animals and how we treat the planet that we live on. Colleen is a recognized expert and thought leader on the culinary, social, ethical, and practical aspects of living compassionately, healthfully, and sustainably. So I love all of that. And she's a fellow author, right? She is an award-winning author of 8 books, including the best-selling Joy of Vegan Baking, which who doesn't love vegan baking, right? The 30-Day Vegan Challenge, which I actually had that book when we first went vegan. We went through that entire book. It was so fun. And then The Joyful Vegan, which is another great book. And then her newest book, which we're going to talk about tonight, A Year of Compassion, 52 Weeks of Living Zero Waste, Plant-Based, and Cruelty-Free. Colleen is also an acclaimed speaker, a regular contributor to NPR, and the host of an all-inclusive, luxury, sustainable, vegan, and animal-friendly trips around the world. And if you follow Colleen on Instagram at The Joyful Vegan, you will see amazing pictures from her travels all over the country. It's so much all over the world. So much fun when she's on a tour and sharing the behind the scenes. Colleen is also the host and producer of the Food for Thought podcast. She lives in Oakland, California with her husband, David, and her adorable cat, Michiko. Michiko. Did I say that right?
Michiko.
Oh, awesome. Welcome to the show, Colleen.
Aww. Oh, thank you so much, Kathy. It's so good to be here. I can't wait to chat with you tonight. Can't wait.
Yes, I'm excited. So those of you watching, hello and welcome. Let us know where you're tuning in. We already know Colleen's tuning in from California. We just moved to Western PA yesterday. We'll be here for a month exploring the Western PA area that we're very familiar with since we lived here. So that's exciting. But I want to jump right into this. I was gifted a copy of The Year of Compassion by Colleen. And even as an 11, I've been vegan for over 11 years. And there was so much information that even I didn't know after living vegan and thinking that, Colleen says it best in the book. Going vegan isn't necessarily the goal, right? Vegan is a way to get to the goal of living compassionately. And so there's just so many anecdotes and stories and snippets that you can pull out of this book to make modifications in your life. So Colleen, let's start out by having you tell us a little bit about why you wrote this book. And also, I love the structure of 52 weeks. So tell us why you structured it that way.
Thanks, Kathy. So I wrote this book because, as you said in your introduction just there, the point isn't to have a badge called vegan. Like, the goal isn't to be as vegan as I can be. And I think people get really tripped up on that. And I think that's where people get really intimidated. And I think that's where people get really misguided because they focus on trying to be perfect and pure. Either that notion stops you from doing anything at all because you think you have to do it all and you have to do it all perfectly, or you become vegan. And I think sometimes we lose the plot and we forget that we also once didn't know, and we have impatience and intolerance and sometimes lack compassion and patience for the people in our lives who we want to, we so desperately want them to make changes. And I think we forget the point, which is to do everything we can to not cause harm. I mean, that is just the whole point. That's what compelled most of us to make these changes in our lives, whether our motivation was for health or for ethics or it doesn't matter. The point is, I want to do better than what I'm doing now. And how can I start doing that? Well, it turns out that by not eating animals or exploiting them in any way is the best thing we can do to live more healthfully, to be healthier, to live more compassionately, to live more sustainably, right? So the whole point is the goals are to live sustainably, compassionately, and healthfully. The goal isn't to be vegan. And so, you know, for me, the thread that runs through all of that is compassion. And that has been the foundation of my work from the very, 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 very start. We rebrand, we change things, we change our bios. I've got to update my bio because I haven't written for NPR in a year. But right, we change things, like things get updated. But for me, the foundation has always been compassion. And so the book is a natural progression from everything else I've done, which is, reflecting also my growth and my journey and my work, which is I'm learning things all the time and I'm getting better and I'm making changes and I'm having revelations and I'm having epiphanies, regarding wildlife or regarding gardening or regarding zero waste and sustainability and conservation. So, I wanted to share kind of the enthusiasm I have around all of these topics and make it easy for people to make changes. Give them, 52 weeks. Originally, I said in the introduction of the book, the first idea for the book was daily dose of compassion, because I love inspiring people every day through kind of shifts in mindset, which is great for shifts in mindset, but you cannot make physical changes every day. You cannot do something new every day without feeling burdened and overwhelmed. So it was my editor's idea to the fact that the book was action oriented to structure the book in 52 weeks, which I think is great because it gives people a week to contemplate, if they are kind of going in order and they really do want to kind of eat it all up, it gives each topic a week to kind of get in your bones, for you to do some research, for you to kind of think about it more, or take the action. So that was the impetus for the book, compassion, and the structure came out of making it as easy as possible for people.
I love that. And I love personally, I love the 52-week setup because it's actionable. You don't have, how we all set goals. I'm going to read 12 books. I'm going to read 24 books in a year. But this is like so actionable. You can read one on a Sunday. You can make it part of your weekly routine. And then you can just all week long, how can I be more of whatever the chapter is about? And because it's all about a year of compassion, to really kind of move into that and talk about that thread that runs through everything that you've done. So when I read the book, I highlighted so many things. I'm like, oh my gosh, we like have such similar philosophies. It's wonderful. And one of the points that you made that I highlighted, and I have it here because I want to make sure I don't misquote it, but you said the point is that if we see veganism or plant-based eating as the goal rather than the means to attaining our goals of the compassion or wellness, we get hung up on ideology and rules and doctrines and dogma, perfection and purity. In other words, I don't aspire to be as vegan as I can be. Rather, I aspire to be as compassionate as I can be. Compassion is the goal. Wellness is the goal. Being vegan, eating plants, not animals, is just the most effective and effortless way I found to achieve those goals. And when you read something like that as a like I say, 11-year vegan, you're like, oh yeah, that is the point, right? Like, oh yeah, because we do get so caught up in the rules. I can't eat that. I shouldn't eat that. You'll be at a party or a barbecue and somebody will be walking around with something and they'll say, oh yeah, you're vegan. You can't eat these. And you're like, I choose not to eat this, right? Like, it's a compassionate choice. It's a decision that I make. It's not a can or can't. And so I'd love for you to even further expand on, this philosophy of compassion, not just like really expand on compassion, I guess is what I want to do. And I mean, we could go on, the whole conversation is going to be about that, but I think that's really what we're here to talk about, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, everyone has a different approach, and I know that when especially if you want to do any kind of advocacy or communication around this thing that becomes so meaningful for all of us, right? For many of us, we want to be as effective as possible. Some of us want to talk about it as only justice spaced. We don't want to talk about, food. We don't think it's about recipes. We want to just talk about the animals. We think it's too mamsy-pamsy and too, soft to talk about compassion. Some people don't want to talk about the animals. They just want to talk about the food and they don't want to hear about the ethics, right? So for me, the whole point of trying to create an orientation for people, which, like I said, the North Star being compassion, which includes compassion for self, right? So I can say compassion and wellness, but wellness is also a reflection of compassion for ourselves. For me, the North Star is compassion, doing everything I can do to not cause harm to myself, to the animals, to the environment. And so that is just my orientation and my guide. And when you focus on that, then you don't get hung up on titles. You don't get hung up on ideology. You don't get hung up on what someone calls themselves. There's a lot of people who say you should not use the word vegan if you're only doing it for health. You should only use, who cares? If that's really where you're putting your energy, you have lost the plot. The whole point is to reflect your own values in your behavior and to be that mirror for other people, because we are just naturally, so that other people are attracted to, and I don't mean that in an authentic way. I mean, quite literally attracted to this thing called compassion that you are manifesting in your behavior by not eating animals. And we'll just talk about the food and eating animals. Of course, there's circuses and, animal testing. I mean, we can talk about that. That's also in the book. But the foundation of what we're talking about here is reflecting our compassion for animals by not eating them. And so if that's what we orient to, then we don't say, gosh, I really love my family, but they're not vegan. We say, I really love my family and they're not reflecting the fullness of their compassion yet. And I want to be a model for that and be a North Star for them to be able to help them reflect the compassion I know they already have, not do this thing, be this thing, call themselves this thing that to them means absolutely nothing because they haven't gone there yet.
Right. And it can
Right?
be people get so defensive. Like family members can get very defensive when I'm going to use push our ideology on them. But when we lead with compassion for ourselves, our wellness, for their wellness, for them and their understanding and their level of awareness, it's a game changer in what you're talking about. It's the energy that then attracts their decisions to do things differently.
Yeah, and some of it is just so it's showing compassion toward them, but it's also seeing the compassion in them that would be the thing that would compel them to manifest that compassion. So it's a very subtle, kind of mind shift, and it's an orientation to the people in our lives so that, I mean, it really is the difference between do you know what you're contributing to? So you're not vegan, you say you love animals. The difference between that and literally standing back with this kind of openness and saying, you are such a compassionate person. And what can I do to continue to inspire that for you to feel the fullness of that? Because it's such an exciting way to live. And I know you want more of that, right? It's not saying anything. It's not advocating. It's not hiding your light. It's actually shining your light, but also creating a space for them to shine their light.
Right. It's reflecting back to them. So in our real life, we have a lawnmower right outside the window. So if you all can hear that, I do apologize. Um, but it's shining the light on their compassion
Yeah, that's
and
right.
recognizing their compassion within them instead of us becoming too rule followy, because it's
Mhm,
not about a rule, it's
mhm,
about expressing the values that we hold.
mhm.
And we all know people who aren't vegan who love animals. They they just they just aren't aware yet.
They aren't aware yet, and There are a lot of forces externally and internally that make it really easy to quell it or to compartmentalize it. I talk about that in The Joyful Vegan, which was the book before this one. And it's a really important book I wish every vegan would read because, some people hear me saying things like, it's not about rules, it's about, reflecting compassion. And they think, oh my gosh, that's so ridiculous. Of course it's about rules. The rules are you don't eat animals. So you're not hearing it correctly if you think I'm not saying that. Of course there's one rule, and that rule literally is follow your compassion, because if you are doing that authentically, you are making choices that cause the least amount of harm as possible. So in The Joyful Vegan, I talk about the social aspects and the emotional aspects of all the things that compel us to say, of course they love. So these memes and these programs that say, how can you love one and eat the other? Like, I totally get that, because it is the compartmentalization that we do to choose willful blindness over making a change in our behavior. Like, I totally get why we want to ask that question, but there actually is an answer to it. And it's because we're really, really good at compartmentalizing our behavior so that we feel good about ourselves without having to be too inconvenienced. And we are supported in that place, in that orientation, by everybody in our lives, by our family members who don't want us to change because it would rock the boat and they don't know what that's going to mean for our relationship, by by the industries, of course, people who are trying to sell their products, by even just strangers, because if we say we're doing something that kind of is demonstrating some kind of consciousness and awareness of someone else's suffering, it is going to make them defensive, because the implication is you think you're saying that you're better than them. And most people, when they have a mirror held up to them, don't say, thank you so much for reflecting my wounds. I'm going to go examine that. They mostly get defensive because they're deflecting back what you are shining. So it's just knowing all of these things before you even just say, no, thanks, I don't want that steak, I'm vegan. Knowing that that's going to cause all of this stuff to rise to the surface, and you're just the conduit. Like, it's not about you, but you are in an opportunity, I would say, to then take the next step to, again, orient people to what it looks like to reflect compassion and do it joyfully and deliciously. Because of course, that's a huge part of it. I don't suffer. This isn't about suffering. Like, it is a really good feeling to live this way, as you know, and I'm sure many of your viewers and listeners know. It's not about suffering. And so that's what we want to reflect when we're talking to people.
Absolutely. You've been vegan for a very long time, right? I mean, it even says that you've been speaking on this for over 30 years. Like, so since you were a baby, of course.
All right. Thank you.
No. But what do you say in those instances when people do offer you a steak, right? Like, you're traveling the world. I'm sure you encounter people who, might offer you a sample of something that you know is not vegan, or, you're at a social event with people that maybe you don't know yet, and they offer to get you something, and you're like, oh no, what do you say? How do you navigate that from a place of compassion and joy without making people feel bad, I guess.
Yeah. Right. And I want to say this because that idea is exactly why so many people don't think they can speak up, because they conflate speaking up for yourself and someone feeling bad as a result with, I'm going to make someone feel bad by speaking up. Like, I'm going to choose to make someone feel bad, because we can do that, right? I mean, we can,
right.
Some of us do want to do that. We want to poke, we want to prod, we want to, provoke. So my point is, there is a difference between you saying I'm vegan and someone being upset by that. There's a difference between that and you wanting to upset someone because they're not vegan. So I do think that is a big part of how we show up. And I do think communication and relationships start long before we show up in that moment. And that requires our own work daily, whether it's through our own mindfulness, meditation, journaling, just whatever we do to come into a situation with an intention of openness and curiosity and compassion that's going to alter our experiences. It's going to alter our interactions with people. So that's the first thing. Before I even show up anywhere, I do say, allow me to speak my truth with integrity and compassion and thoughtfulness. And, I will say something like that before entering a conversation, right? Before entering a an event or whatever. For specific things, I really do think some of the answer has to do with where I am, who I'm with, what my relationship is with them, what's going on at that moment. There's so many contexts. And so that's why I try to give kind of a broad orientation, which is first orient toward, what you can control, orient toward, I'm here to raise awareness. I'm here to speak my truth. I'm here to be a voice for animals. I'm here to exude compassion for everyone. That's a foundation that's going to guide you in terms of how you respond. If you go into a situation already feeling stressed and anxious and judgmental, that is going to determine how you respond. So I say this very long answer because first we have to have a foundation of how we orient. But then, it does alter. So to answer your question, it's not when we travel so much because we're in a little bit of a bubble because we host these trips that are all vegan. And so we're with people who are supporting us, whether it's the restaurants or the hotels or all of it. And we're around each other. And so it's a bit of a bubble when we travel. But I would say certainly when I'm with neighbors, and we have a lot of social events with our neighbors. And, we've been here 13 years on this incredible street and with these incredible people. And I don't think anybody's become vegetarian or vegan since we've been here, and they know what I do and who I am and how I show up.
Right.
So even the other night, there was a happy hour on Friday, and I bring muffins and I'm there, and we're there with a small group before more people show up. And there are, so the host made, Trader Joe's has these little bird nests, like shredded vegetables that you fry up, and they're delicious. And our host made those. And I know they made those because they like them, but they also know that we're vegan, right?
Right.
And another neighbor showed up and she was talking about the dish she brought. And of course, naturally she said, oh, I think you'd like, oh, no, you can't have that. And I do use my personality and my sense of humor. And I said, I can have whatever I want. I don't want it. And I'm in a relationship with them where I can say it that way. I can be a little sassy. I can be a little playful, but I can say it. And they laugh and they go, you're right. No, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. Now I might say that to someone else and they might go, oh, please, whatever. Shut up. Right. I don't know. That's not my problem. But I'm trying to navigate this dance of not making them feel bad, making sure that they know I can have that, because I want them to know if they ever made a decision like this, that this isn't about, again, sacrifice and suffering, and still be open and truthful and playful. So that's how I do it. Now, look, someone else showed up a little while later with a plate full of, sliced pastrami and whatever. And I couldn't even, I walk away and I go sit in a different spot, but I don't say anything to anybody.
Right.
It's an open party. So it's just like you kind of do this dance all the time and you just be yourself. You come in with a good attitude and you go with the intention of whatever your intention is. Mine is not to change minds. My intention is to be the presence of compassion and joy that I am, that I am, just because this is how I live, right?
Because that's how you are.
That's how I am, who I am. And that makes a difference in every interaction I have. And everybody can do that. You don't have to study, the answers and what's the right answer and what should I say when. Be authentic and people are going to respond to that. And if there are questions you get where they push back a little bit, there might be a circumstance where you say, well, gosh, that was kind of hurtful. You might say that.
Right.
Well, that was kind of rude. I say this sometimes. I may have even said it that night. They'll say something and I go, really? You think I'm like, I've never heard that before. I could say that. Sometimes, Kathy, one of the most powerful responses is silence. Sometimes if they say something and they're making excuses and they're defending kind of whatever, I might just look at them. And if anyone's watching, they would see me just go, not say anything. And the person might go, well, what? I go, huh. And they go, what? You've heard that before? They hear themselves. But when we think we have to have all the answers all the time and have these quips and responses, then people can't hear what they just said, right? So it's just a dance. And I love that dance. I love it.
It really shines through what you're saying in living your authenticity and being yourself in these situations. And I think I've done some coaching for the last five years, and I find that everybody wants the answer. but really the answer is to be yourself, live these values that we're talking about, compassion, wellness, right? Many people go vegan for their own health, right? There's lots of studies that show that it's a very healthy way to eat, and that's showing compassion to ourselves. And then as you do that, you allow yourself to learn more about animal agriculture, about the sustainability piece, about the circuses and animal entertainment and animal products that we wear and like as you start to open your eyes and go through the levels. And you talked a little bit about that too in the beginning, that one of the reasons you wrote this book is because you are growing and expanding, you're having these revelations and epiphanies, and because we all grow and expand, right? We either are growing or we're not growing, right? It's either create or disintegrate, they say. And so as we learn better, as we learn more, we can do better, we can do more. And so I think that's really what you're talking about too, is this kind of experiencing it, right? As when you're out there and you're experiencing these conversations, you're learning how to be more yourself, to live more in those values, to shine more of that, and allow people, the silence that you said, allowing people to just hear themselves for a moment and say, oh, yeah, what I said wasn't very kind. It wasn't very compassionate. And, here's this person who's at this party, that's so kind and compassionate, and you're not responding. You're just giving them something to reflect on. And I think that's really, really powerful. So let me just do a shout out to some of our friends that are watching. We have Eugene from Tri-Cities, Washington. Hello. Denise, looking forward to reading Colleen's latest book and perhaps meeting her one day on a World Vegan Travel. That's amazing. And we have Belinda from Ohio. Hello, hello. Others, if you're watching, let us know where you're tuning in from. Again, we have Diane from Wichita. I am Kathy Davis of VegInspired. We have Colleen Patrick-Goudreau from Joyful Vegan. And we're talking about Colleen's new book, 52, I just lost the title, A Year of Compassion, 52 Weeks of Living Zero Waste, Plant-Based, and Cruelty-Free. I'm like, I have a year of compassion, but the tagline, I'm like, but it's so important. That's the thing. It really, I was going to share another quote that I really liked from it. So there's two pieces that really stood out. And again, because we have so many similar pieces, I had no doubt that we would be on the same page with some of these. So at the end of week 29, which is the chapter on when to choose organic. And I love organic produce, right? And so for us, we always try to find local organic farms when we travel. And you say it so eloquently, and it's something that really jumps out at me when I think about people talking about, the food, not being quality, and what do I eat, and ultra processed food, this and all of that, right? And you say any type of vegetable, fruit, grain, lentil, bean, mushroom, nut, or seed, however it is grown and however it's labeled, is better than none at all. In other words, eat more plants. And I think that's so powerful, because I think so many of us, we can kind of get into maybe some of the myths and things, but so many of us are like, oh, well, I can't eat organic, so I'll just buy whatever thing I can get from a box, and that's fine, right? But no, eat more plants, whether it's organic or conventional, whether it's local or from Walmart, like wherever it's from, eat more plants. And then you also added in, at the end when you were talking about, I don't know where this was in the book, but you were talking about the chapter on eating locally for the community. And that's really one of the biggest reasons we like to find local farms. And I loved that you highlighted the studies that talk about, sometimes local grown isn't the most sustainable option. We think it is, because that was the movement that you mentioned. But one of the reasons that we specifically like to eat local and support local is so that we can give back to the communities. Oftentimes we're only in these places for a short time, maybe a week, maybe a weekend, maybe a month. But as we're traveling through, we love to find local companies that we can support and build up, even just giving back to the community a little bit feels good, and we get amazing produce.
Yeah, I mean, so what is it? It's day what? Specifically around eating local 37, week 37, not day, week 37.
Right. And the organic was week 29.
Thank you. Yeah. So in the organic, I remember my editor pushed back a little bit on that one because, there are, depending on how you measure organic, sometimes it's going to have more of an impact on ecosystems versus non-organic. So that's what I talk about in that chapter. And it's really a matter of what you're measuring. And so you can't say by all of the inputs that it's always 100% better, because in terms of the volume output, and if you're solving for quantity, if you're solving for volume, organic does yield a lower volume. Not in such a way that we shouldn't eat organic. Of course, I'm not saying that, but just in terms of what we're measuring, we have to just be aware. I remember this from long ago. I mean, I used to always say to people, because people ask, like, I do think it's a reflection of the luxury we have in our very privileged, economically developed country. I'll just say it specifically for the US or North America. I mean, most parts of Western Europe, like, we are in a very economically advanced, privileged place, especially compared to 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. I mean, we just are. And I know people don't want to look at that because we are afraid if we don't look at how bad things are now, that we're going to become complacent and not want to make them better. And I think it's just this wrong-headedness. I think it's just this dichotomy that we don't have to, aspire to. So, okay, if you can't or don't want to or are unable to afford or can't find all the time organic 100%, then don't do it 100%. Like, just eat more of the plants that you need, because that's going to have a greater impact than if you didn't eat the plants, right? So we overthink things because we have all these options and we have all these labels, and I think we just go down a road that I think winds up making us feel just completely, impotent in some ways. And that has to do with the local as well. And so, I know that was a huge movement at one point. The locavore movement was a huge movement. And so people who wanted to keep eating their animals would say things like, well, I get locally grown, beef, or locally made beef, or whatever they would say.
Right.
And the truth is, it's not about how far that meat traveled once that animal was raised and then brought into a feedlot and then slaughtered and then brought back to your supermarket. Transportation, even in that scenario, accounts for 1% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So if we are measuring greenhouse gas emissions in this case, and there's many ways to measure, if you want to weigh meat against any plant food, 100% any plant food is going to win every time. Yes, almonds. Yes, soy. Yes, all the things, versus
Right.
any animal product. It is just the way it is. But because transportation accounts for so little in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, for instance, you are actually not doing anything by getting locally grown meat. It's because that it's meat is what contributes to the greenhouse gas emissions, not how it traveled. So I'm hoping that it just at least gives some people some food for thought to be able to make informed decisions. And I do quote, as you mentioned, the sources. I mean, I do really encourage people to go over to Our World in Data, read Hannah Ritchie's book called Not the End of the World. And that Our World in Data is just led by so many incredible people who are just mining all of the data to be able to give people the science so that they can make informed decisions. But as we know, and this is not the conversation right now, but people don't make decisions based on science. They're making it based on emotion a lot of the time as well.
Right. But I think it's important, right? Like, and that's what your book does, right? It brings in the stories which give us that emotional connection, right? Like, even the story about the local farmers market, like, that you guys walk there together, and it's a ritual that you enjoy, that brings you joy. And so you do that. And that's when we have those pieces, that when we can make the compassion part of the joy of our life, we just live it. And that's what I think, one of that's what I think really shines through in the book, is that you're not saying, okay, be you and then add all these things. You're like, learn to incorporate this into the values that you have, because you already are a compassionate person.
Yeah.
We can see the compassion within you. You just have these pieces that are these experiences that aren't necessarily reflecting that compassion.
Reflecting it. I mean, that's what I said, before I was vegan, I was compassionate. And it is wrong to say I wasn't. That compassion was quelled. It was covered up. This is why I always say I didn't become anything different when I became vegan. I did become a better version of myself. But instead of becoming something new, I actually removed the blocks to the compassion that was already there. And that's how I see this interaction with everybody in the world is it's there. It's just covered with a lot of muck. And my hope and intention is to just help remove the muck so that people can see it's there and then want to reflect it in their behavior.
Yes, that's a beautiful way of explaining it, right? Because we all have that innate compassion, and there's just clouds in front of it. And so your book helps to clear the clouds so that our compassion can shine. So awesome. Well, we've been going for about 30 minutes, but before we wrap up, I want to highlight one last thing, because you say it so well in the book, and it's something that I have said for years. It's not about perfection, it's about intention. And I know that that's a focus that you have, right? So how can people move forward with intention without that feeling of perfection?
Mm. Right. So, number one, start where you are. I mean, I've used this example so many times when people say to me things like, I say I'm vegan. They say, "Oh, I love chicken." Like, but I could give up, I could give up beef and I could give up pork, but I do love cheese. And I say, "Well, what are you eating now?" And they say, "Well, everything." And I said, "Well, you just said you don't even care about chicken and beef and pork, whatever they said, beef and pork. And so why don't you just stop eating beef and pork?" And they go, "Oh, I never thought about that." So the idea that we do nothing because we think we have to do everything is what stops us from doing anything. So don't do nothing because you can't do everything. Do something. Anything is where to start. And that requires self-honesty, because I know people could hear that. Some people might hear that and go, "Oh, that's just going to give people license to do nothing." No. When people hear that they have the permission to do something, but not everything, just to not be perfect, to just do something, they actually wind up going further because they go, "I could do more than what I've been saying I could do. I
Mhm.
could do more." So that is like the end all be all of not living perfectionly. Don't do nothing because you can't do everything. Do something, anything. Start there.
I love it. I love it. Start where you are, right?
Start
So
there.
if you're watching, start where you are. And if this video, give it, first of all, give it a thumbs up and a like, but share it with somebody. Maybe this video strikes a chord and you're like, "You know what? This is something that a friend could use," right? We're just having a friendly conversation. If the book, you get the book and you read it, pass it on. Right? That's one of the biggest things that I've found is, we don't have to hoard the book, the
Mm,
information. We
mhm,
can pass it on. That's a very compassionate way to live. That's
mhm,
a very sustainable way, right? Like I love books. I travel in an RV. I can only have so
mm.
many books. There's only so much weight that I can add to the books. I know I saw that when you
Don't look at
walked
my
in, and I was
bookshelf.
like, I want a bookshelf like that so bad. But if you love the book, buy a couple copies and pass it around to people.
Yeah.
Like I always say that when we're when we find something that really works, or that speaks to our heart, pass that on. That's
Mhm.
one way that you can show compassion. So share this video. um, Go follow Colleen on joyfulvegan.com. And yeah, Colleen, thank you so much for being here. I had such a great time. I was so grateful that you had time to pop in here and talk about your new book with us.
Oh, thank you, Kathy. Thank you so much for your enthusiasm and for everything you do. And for everyone who joins us, I do recognize many of your names there. So thank you guys for joining, and do pass on Kathy's work, and just we're all doing our part. Thanks for doing yours, Kathy.
Thanks for doing yours. And like I said, I love the book. I'm super excited. So, you guys, I put the link in the description below for Colleen's book, so you can grab that. It's available pretty much wherever books are sold, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, Colleen, thank you so much for being here. And all of you watching, thanks so much. Until next time, eat more plants and live veg inspired. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.